Over to you, Minister.
Thank you, ma'am. In fact, like you pointed out, India continues to remain a hub for vaccine manufacturing, and within India, Telangana and Hyderabad have been, on the forefront. And today, like I pointed out, more than one third of global vaccines are produced from Genome Valley in Hyderabad. So we're very proud, and all the very, very pertinent points you made. Thank you very much. But one quick thing before I turn, quick question before I turn to the panel here, of the industry leaders. Yesterday, I had read a statement from the World Health Organization chief saying that while a vaccine, the hope for a vaccine is very real and it might happen, there is also an equal chance that there could never be a vaccine. Can you help us understand this? Because, vaccine in current situation seems to be a ray of hope, but there must be a reason, there must be a logic. I'm sure the industry here will never, possibly agree with whatever was said, but nevertheless, help us understand why or what would prompt someone to say, like in the case of HIV, how there could never be a vaccine. In case of COVID as well, it was pointed out yesterday that there also is a chance, however fat or slim it is, that there could never be a vaccine. Is that a fair reasoning, fair thought process? What are your thoughts?
So I think the experts who are sitting with you know very well that vaccine development is a risky business and that success is not assured. We have many diseases for which we don't have vaccines, in spite of a lot of R&D having been done over decades, like HIV, TB, malaria, etc. We have so far not had a vaccine for a coronavirus. So this is a new endeavor. So we are optimistic because of the efforts going into it and because of the number of different platforms that are being tested. But we haven't understood the virus completely. And so there is always a possibility that we don't get it right or that it takes longer. We may not get it right the first time. It may take longer. And that is why I think the DG is warning people, do not believe that the problem is going to be solved in 6 months or 12 months. We don't know that for sure. Unless we see results from the phase 3 efficacy trials, and unless we follow people up to see how long they are protected for, we really can't say that this problem is going to come to an end in 2021 or 2022. So I think he's preparing people to think longer term and to think about public health, vaccine being one part of the battle. Vaccine is not the silver bullet, I think is what he said. Drugs are also important and new drugs are being also tested because that can bring down the severity, that can prevent death. So that's a very important one. And new diagnostics also, like the antigen detection tests, etc. Saliva tests will help.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Now let me turn to the industry leaders here. We'll start with Dr. Krishna Ello of Bharat Biotech as we talk about the race for vaccine development, as we talk about the efficacy of the vaccine, the longevity of its impact, etc., etc. Help me understand, because now from a layman's perspective, I am a layman, I would love to understand this. Normally I hear that it would take anywhere from a few years to sometimes even a decade to create and produce a vaccine, because there is a lot of science involved, there is a lot of trials involved, there is a lot of practices involved to make sure that the drug is actually efficient, the vaccine is actually efficient and very, very long in terms of its impact as well. I hope we are not compromising on the science in this pursuit, in this race, in this sort of a rat race, so to speak, of one against another. I hope the science of the vaccine development is not being compromised, is not being adversely impacted. Can you help us understand how you're able to overcome these, typical timelines, etc., and how we are able to now already, because I've been to your facility, Bharat Biotech, in fact, Covaxin and other vaccines that you're currently developing are already nearly in the phase 3 stage. So help us understand how you're taking care of the science behind and ensuring the efficacy of the vaccine is also taken into account before we talk about a full-fledged launch. Help us understand, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Minister. And we are really proud of Soumya heading the WHO. I think first Indian and first woman candidate heading there. We are proud of you. And I think, the vaccine field takes 14 to 15 years a vaccine to develop. So we are trying to develop in less than 18 months or 12 months in this vaccine. It's complicated. But at the same time, with the vaccine experience, we are also much more cautious. It's not that we are trying to make it a vaccine just to move it fast to the market. No. I think we are putting a lot of intensive research in all 360 degrees, and that is where the partnership is helping us with US, WHO, everybody helping us to look at the some of the scientific aspect of it, so that we don't short circuit the science. That is not there. So we are much more rigorous today. But problem, as Soumya said, the virus is new one. So it's like a relationship. You need to build a relationship with the virus to understand how this virus behaves. Besides, the people's genetic makeup also is playing a role. As she said, we don't know whether all of us had a respiratory pathogen infection. That might be the reason why we have death rate less in this country compared to the Italy or Spain, where the high death rate. So we might have got a lot of other infections before respiratory pathogens. So I think, we are not short-circuiting in any way the science. And I can tell you, our science is all critiqued by the global community, not by India alone. It's a global community. So rest assured that any of the Hyderabad company or Indian company will short-circuit on science on this matter. That I can assure them.
Thank you, Krishna. In fact, that's very comforting to hear because, while we are all actively wanting a very, very impactful vaccine coming out ASAP, possibly day after tomorrow or yesterday, in fact, the fact is we cannot afford to short circuit, like you put, the whole science behind vaccine development. Now let me turn over to Mahima. As Dr. Swaminathan pointed out, you're in a very pivotal role right now, representing the developed countries in Gavi, and also your company biologically has been in vaccine development for more than nearly 5 decades now, and a very, very reputed organization which has known the science. Why don't you walk us through, because again, from a very layman perspective, there are multiple approaches to a vaccine. If there are 150 vaccines that are currently under preparation, etc., what are the different approaches the world is taking? What is the difference between the vaccine that you're currently engaged in vis-a-vis Indian Immunologicals or Covaxin of Bharat or say Serum Institute, etc.? Also talk us through possibly how has vaccine development evolved in the last 5 decades, because you've been in this business for the last several decades. So talk us through how scientific developments have helped and possibly how that can be put to good use so that this expeditious delivery that people are anticipating for COVID can be fructified. No, thanks, Mahima. Cheers. Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me. Okay. So first of all, I think at the heart of it, vaccine development, to put it in really simplistic terms, is really giving your body a bacteria or a virus that's highly purified. So it's basically stimulating what would naturally be the way a disease would be contracted, but in a very controlled fashion, such that it's giving your body the ability and the time to raise antibodies and fight the infection naturally. And the reason it needs to be controlled is because it needs to be safe. You don't want a high viral load and so on. So at the crux of it, all vaccines aim to do what nature does itself. All the people recovering from COVID, they're getting exposed to the virus and they're raising antibodies and they're getting protected. So this is a way of simulating that. So all vaccines aim to do that. If I had to classify vaccines into the categories that based on the technology platform, currently I would classify them into 4. And I'm sorry if there's scientists in the audience, there might be 10, but the way I understand it in my head is into 4 buckets. So the first bucket is viral vaccines that are inactivated. These can be whole virions or the virus itself that's inactivated either chemically or through heat or through other mechanisms. And I believe Bharat Biotech's Covaxin follows that approach, as do several others. The second bucket, I would say, is protein vaccines. So these are the spike proteins, which is the spike on the corona, giving it its name. There's the RBD, the receptor binding domain-based proteins, which play a role in inhibiting the virus attaching itself to the ACE2 receptors in our body. So there's a whole host of vaccines that are targeting spike proteins or the RBD. The third bucket, I would say, also targets spike proteins or RBD. So effectively, it's a protein approach, but it's also driven by new vectors, either modified vaccine Ankaria or the AdVac vectors, and so on. And the fourth bucket, I would say, is the other and really novel technologies, which are your DNA vaccines and RNA vaccines, which is basically like a messenger. It's like coding. It's aimed to deliver a code to your genes and to your RNA to start producing antibodies against the virus. Frankly, it's extremely interesting platform technology, extremely exciting. And I think, DNA and RNA vaccines have been in development for close to 15 years now. The moment to test that technology. But unlike human beings, not all vaccines are created equal. And each of these come with their own sets of challenges in order to develop, like Dr. Swaminathan pointed out. Some of the new DNA and RNA vaccines need to be kept in minus 70 degrees. Now, these are programmatically extremely challenging. What we're doing to, have an expeditious vaccine. And in many ways, I agree with Dr. Ella that while there's no trade-offs in science, we are collectively making some trade-offs, because in reality, you would expect a vaccine to be over 90% efficacious. But all of vaccine development, not just now, historically has to be viewed in the context of risk. Now, when you had widespread polio, we agreed to take the risk that when you take get polio because of the vaccine. But that's because the risk of polio was so high. I think COVID is similar. The fact that WHO put out TPP requirements for 50 to 80% efficacy tells you the trade-off that we're willing to make, but never at the cost of safety, because the last thing you want to do is make a situation even worse. Now, coming to our own candidates, we've been working on an RBD protein candidate, and the expression system we're using is yeast, it's Pichia. It's tried and tested. We've made hundreds of million doses of hepatitis B on that platform. And I think much like ourselves, many companies are choosing platforms that they are familiar with, that they have infrastructure for. Because the key to speed is, 150 candidates are not going to be able to make the vaccine in hundreds of millions of doses. And I think that's very key, to marry the technology with the infrastructure and the track record and capability. Now, our choice of RBD was dictated by the infrastructure match that would best allow us to make vaccine as quickly as possible. And so far, we're going to start phase 1 studies in September, but from the manufacturability perspective, we have enough data that assures us that we'll be in a position to produce 80 to 100 million doses a month of this vaccine from the get-go. I think that's crucial, because in the early years, you're going to have a demand-supply gap and allocations. Everybody is going to fight over it. So it's really important to be able to scale quickly. And when we talk about challenges, we could discuss that. But in my mind, the reason it'll be expeditious is because we are making certain trade-offs in context of risk, but not in relation to safety. We may be making trade-offs in terms of the expectation on timing of protection, because we may say, hey, it's okay if it protects us for 1 year, we'll take it yearly as opposed to a lifetime, but really not at the cost of safety. And the second most important factor is having large-scale infrastructure that you can deploy these technologies into. I hope that answers.
No, absolutely. In fact, before we go to scale, before we talk about how, like Dr. Swaminathan pointed out, some countries tend to hoard, at the cost of developing nations, etc. Before we go into that,